Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in the USA. There is the UNGA, there is the Quad meet. He's going to interact with the community. This is very critical for Bharat. Because of the Lok Sabha 2024 numbers, is his position weakened? Or because of the fact that he's perhaps the only global leader who can not just embrace or hug Vladimir Putin in Moscow, but also walk across to Volodymyr Zelensky and hug him in Kiev? Does that make him perhaps a vital cog in the global wheel, where increasingly we are seeing multiple conflicts across the world? Geopolitics, the various dynamics, let's quickly understand what's going to happen and what we can expect with PM Modi in the US. Zaka Jacob is with me, and so is Rahul Shivshankar. Rahul, your take, what will your eyes be on? The warmth with which the diaspora greets him, the energy is there, or perhaps what PM can wiggle out of Quad?
Look, I think outcomes, we must have limited expectations, at least at a bilateral level with America right now. It's a transitory moment for America, given the fact that Mr. Biden is going to be sort of demitting office very soon, in fact, by November. Many people would obviously say that beyond pleasantries, there's no real, policy initiative that Mr. Biden can, at some level, commit to. But what definitely this particular meeting will enable is a coming to terms with certain irritants that you just referred to a short while back. One of those is India's persistent channelization of its own interests, its own sort of strategic autonomy, as it's called. And that is beginning to irk America somewhere. Though the Americans realize that they have to make allowances given the importance of India in the larger global scheme of things, especially in the Indo-Pacific. Till China remains an adversary in the American imagination, India will remain an important player. How much can Mr. Modi now use this opportunity to tell Mr. Biden, and through him, of course, the Democratic Party and anyone else who might be actually stepping up to the plate? Could be Ms. Kamala Harris at this moment in time. It looks as if she is doing well in the elections, but anything could change. But if one were to assume that the Democrats will return, it is an important moment for Mr. Modi to convince America that, look, while we are pursuing our strategic interests, we are not militating against the values that draw us together in the long term. And I think that is a fundamental aspect of that interaction. The Quad, look, with two leaders, frankly, moving out, and the Quad itself focusing more on tech, high tech, the transfers of technology to become an enabler to improve lives in the Indo-Pacific region. It's an important body, but it is certainly not the AUKUS. The AUKUS has a strategic dimension, military dimension. The Quad doesn't. It's more of a body that allows for easier perambulation, really, of both vital resource and, most importantly, of ideas. So I think the Quad will retain its core. The diaspora event, since you brought it up, I think is an important opportunity for Modi to connect with the diaspora that has just been buffeted by Rahul Gandhi's musings in the United States. So it'll be interesting to see that response, really, to Mr. Modi's interaction with the diaspora. It's his, he has these massive events, really, which allow him to reach across, become personable, become more human in the imagination, really, of the diaspora. So that'll be interesting to see.
Well, has his currency weakened, or globally does he become is he now a person who's also voicing the global south? Is he representing that entity? And is there a difference between how local politics perceives and what plays out closer home, Zaka, plus what's happening on the international place? Is India already seated at the high table, and Modi with his third term, is PM Modi one of the, cherished chairs or the marked seats for him?
Yeah, let's face it, this is Mr. Modi's third term, and he knows that this is the legacy term. This is how history is going to judge him. Why would he go all the way to Moscow, meet Putin, and within a few weeks, meet Zelensky? The point is, I think Mr. Modi is also realizing that this is there are two great wars happening in our times right now. One is Russia-Ukraine, and the other, of course, is Israel and Hamas. And Mr. Modi realizes that India is one of the few countries which has good relations with both Russia and with the Western world. And one of the things, I think Vikram Misri in the press conference, the Foreign Secretary in the press conference before the Prime Minister's visit to the US said that there will be a peace proposal that we will put forth. Now, what the contours of that peace proposal is, we don't know yet. But even Putin acknowledged that. The people who can actually play mediator or help find a solution to the Russia-Ukraine war are India, China, and Brazil. Mr. Trump, when he was speaking, when he let slip that he will be meeting Prime Minister Modi in his time in New York, also said, the leaders of India, Brazil, China, they're very smart. They're at the top of their game. Those are the words that Trump used. But on the Quad itself, I think, look, I agree with what Rahul said. Two of those leaders, Mr. Biden, the president of the US, and Fumio Kishida, who's the prime minister of Japan, are both lame duck. Mr. Kishida has already resigned. In fact, this weekend, the LDP, which is the ruling party in Japan, will be choosing a new prime minister. And there is a 1 in 10 or 15 chance, because the field is very big, that Japan may get its first ever woman prime minister. So let's see how that plays out. So I don't see any major breakthrough in the Quad meeting, especially because, like I said, 2 out of the 4 heads of government are practically lame duck. But the evolution of the Quad itself has been quite an interesting one. Remember, this was an idea that was floated by Shinzo Abe, the late Japanese Prime Minister, way back in 2007. Initially, the United States did not warm up to the idea. India did not warm up to the idea for a very, very long time, which is why when Trump took office, he was the first one who said that, look, we need to look at the idea of Indo-Pacific. It's no longer just Asia-Pacific, it's the Indo-Pacific. So that's something that India had been advocating for a long time. What has happened, I think the evolution of the Quad is, initially when it was planned, when it was formulated, it was supposed to be the coming together of countries that are aggrieved by China. India has its own set of problems with China. We've been having it for the last 4 years. I don't think that boundary situation has resolved completely. The United States, as Rahul was saying, this is the fundamental 21st century threat for the United States, the rise of China. And they know that they can't take on China on their own. They need, like-minded countries. So that's where Japan comes in. That's where India comes in. But I think the Quad right now has reached a point where it is kind of stuck. It's doing a whole bunch of things. It's doing cancer research. I believe one of the big announcements in this visit is going to be on cancer research. It's doing climate change. It's doing disaster relief. It's doing a little bit of military to military as well. But all countries, the US, India especially, is going out of its way to say that, look, this is not a military alliance. This is not AUKUS, to reference to Rahul's point. This is not NATO. And we don't want it to be either. Then the question arises, are you just sort of tipping your toes around the edges? Because ultimately, let's face it, the elephant in the room is China. The reason why these 4 countries have come together is to counter China.
But somewhere it could also be that they are devising Quad as an economic empowerer, right? as an entity that will lift the overall economics of this entire region, because, well, give or take of it, unless you have a certain level of economic heft and an economic dependence, you cannot become a military power. No point just exercising, flexing muscles militarily. And Bharat does not want it officially for it to be part of any military alliance. And it's in its own interest. The other question is that, what about the needling of the Five Eyes? Now, 2 of the Five Eyes are also part of the Quad. Now, why is it that there is a lawsuit against Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Ajit Doval, and some of the others being done by someone who's a wanted person by Bharat, who's a US citizen, and who's being allowed to deliberately go ahead, and his entities are vandalizing temples and pushing out, saying earlier it was bullet, now it was ballot, and all this subterfuge that's being played. The other part is this entire game by the Pakistanis wading into Jammu and Kashmir and trying to revive this somewhere, even as this Union Territory is going to polls. And Dhaka, I'm going to start with you on this. From my end, I'm going to watch out for this entire plebiscite bogey, if it may come at the UNGA, somewhere to try and push India into a corner while saying you're a valued friend, but we'll continue to needle you, we'll continue to push you in the corner because we don't want you to rise beyond a certain level. We want you to grow till where we are comfortable you growing.
See, Pakistan has been asking for a plebiscite for the last 70 years. That has no value in international affairs, because Pakistan at the end of the day is a small country. A plebiscite will gain resonance only if one of the P5 countries, US, Russia, Britain, France, one of the P5 countries actually says, okay, this is the way to go. And I don't see any of the P5 countries wanting to alienate India or to cold shoulder India in that kind of a fashion, because they